Welcome, we're back. It's not Direct Line anymore, it's Leon Charney's report. Why Leon Charney's report? Because we felt that we should expand our horizons. The Middle East is cooking as usual, but today we have a very important event going on, and that's the debates about who should be the next mayor of New York. It's Sunday afternoon at 5 o'clock. You've seen one debate last night and probably one this morning if you woke up in time. But we have two gentlemen here who are really experts on the political scene. We have one who is representing the Dinkins camp, and that's Assemblyman Jerrold Nadler. Welcome. And Raymond Harding from the Liberal Party is also, I guess, cemented his relationship with Giuliani before the whole thing began. Welcome, Mr. Harding.
Thank you very much.
Jerry, why is the Jewish vote so important in this election?
Well, the Jewish vote is always an important vote in New York because in New York City, at least in New York State, it's a large vote. It's particularly important in this election because it seems to be the swing vote. The black vote, according to all the polls, is pretty solid behind David Dinkins. The Italian vote seems pretty solid behind, not totally obviously, but pretty solid behind Giuliani. The Hispanic vote, we know how that's breaking. The Jewish vote is not only a swing vote, but a volatile vote. According to the polls, it's been swinging to a large extent back and forth and may very well determine the election.
Mr. Harding, your opinion?
Well, I think Giuliani can't win without a goodly portion of the Jewish vote, and one of the reasons that it's crucial is that Jewish voters, by and large, are independent. Since this is a fusion candidacy, meaning a joinder of the Republican and Liberal parties, what is necessary for a Giuliani victory is to get in a good share of independents and independent Democrats. And the Jewish voter historically is a well-read man or woman.
Does he vote?
Jews vote in greater preponderance than any other segment of the electorate. And we feel that Giuliani candidacy, based on the notion of a quality candidacy to bring a reform independent government back to City Hall, will make a heavy appeal among the Jewish electorate.
Mr. Harding, are you satisfied that it's Dinkins instead of Koch that's running against Giuliani?
Either one would have been the same. The point of the matter is that if you count the 4 years of Abe Beam before Koch's 12 years, the regular Democratic organization has had control of City Hall for 16 years, with the consequences that there's more crime, more drugs, infrastructure falling down, bridges that are in danger of falling down. Last 4 years there have been revelations of the greatest municipal scandals in the history of New York City. It doesn't matter whether it's Koch or Dinkins, because Dinkins is the representative of the same clubhouse organization that's been at the helm of City Hall. And when we're talking about the Democratic Party, you're not talking about the historical party of Roosevelt, Truman, or Kennedy. You're talking about the party of Manus, Friedman, and Esposito. And those are exactly the people who've been pulling the strings at City Hall for the last 16 years. So the identity of the particular candidate is irrelevant. What's important is that the same crowd that's been in control would continue to be in control under a Dinkins candidacy, and it's time for a reform government to come into City Hall.
Jerry, you're a Democrat. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's just amusing to hear 30-year-old rhetoric which has so little relationship to current realities.
Why, are there no drug problems in New York?
No, obviously we have all those problems.
Are the bridges falling
down? But there's no monolithic Democratic Party in New York, nor is there any monolithic party of any sort in New York, with the possible exception, not even the Liberal Party, the Conservative Party. But there's no monolithic party structure in New York anymore. There hasn't been for a long time. The Dinkins candidacy, to be blunt, is the result of a revolt of large segments of Democratic constituencies against the administration of Mayor Koch. I think it's wonderful that Mayor Koch is now supporting Dinkins in the general election for whatever reasons, but the fact is there was a revolt against the Koch administration precisely because many of us felt that the corruption, the tired administration that had been there too long, it was time for change. And Dave Dinkins represents a change. Giuliani represents a change. The question is, what kind of a change do you want? And we ought to talk about Dinkins and Giuliani and not beat up on the Koch administration, because Mayor Koch is not running again.
Mr. Harding, you actually gave birth to the Giuliani campaign. Would that be a correct statement?
I was instrumental in it, yes.
Could you give us a little history about how you came to start such a campaign?
The Liberal Party's predecessor party, the American Labor Party, which since 1936 until now, between the ALP and the Liberal Party in New York City, surprisingly enough, and I think most people will be surprised, has nominated more Republicans as its mayoral candidates than it has Democrats. And it's natural, because historically in New York City, as in other large urban centers in the state, there's been a democratic machine. We call it the duchies and dukedoms of the county leaders. And so part of our party's historical role is to oppose the democratic machine. So as you may recall, we were involved in a fusion coalition that resulted in LaGuardia's election, that resulted in John Lindsay's election. And now, cyclically and periodically, it appears that whenever Democrats are unchecked over a long period of time at City Hall, sooner or later corruption sets in. And last fall, we made a determination that we would follow a dual path in seeking out the candidate for the Liberal Party, whom we thought would best serve as mayor. We interviewed several Democratic candidates, but at the same time, we took a very close look at Rudy Giuliani and made a determination that he had the ability, that he had the vision, and that he had the leadership potential to become the great new leader of New York City, who could bring on reform. And historians and maybe even members of the Assembly might recognize the fact that history works cyclically, and every 16 or 20 years or so in New York City, there is a political dynamic in the mind of the electorate which is sweep out the rascals. And it's that notion that gave birth to the Giuliani fusion candidacy.
So it's like a cleansing operation.
That's exactly what we hope it'll be.
Jerry, one of my former clients was a man named Jackie Mason. Your comments about the Jackie Mason, I don't know how we want to...
Affair.
I don't know. It's not an affair, because that would... I guess it's a vituperative attack on David Dinkins. What do you feel about that?
Well, I think
first of all, did it have any effect? And Ray, I want to ask you the same question.
I think over a period of time, no. I mean, Jackie Mason made some very foolish comments and was promptly ousted from the political campaign. And I think by Election Day, that and other foolish comments by other, I was about to say by minor players in other campaigns, except that he was a major player. Even so, I don't think it's going to have much of an effect. I think that the real impact, the voters look at David Dinkins. They know he is his own person. They know he ran a campaign against the incumbent mayor. They know he represents a change. They know Giuliani represents a change, and they have to look at those two people and judge them and say who is trustworthy, who has a vision for the city, who has shown performance in office, who has shown the characteristics we want to see as mayor. And those are the things I think the voters are going to be looking at, and I think the voters look at that. We're going to elect David.
We're going to get into two specific subjects about each of them, because I want to be fair to both. But Ray, tell us about the Jackie Mason affair, attack, whatever you want to... Did it have any effect?
Yes, I think it had some effect. First of all, it was unfortunate. Jackie Mason is a Borscht Belt comedian. He's been doing the same routine for over 30 years. Those of us who with some gray hair remember once he got kicked off the Ed Sullivan Show for some antic. And this was an unfortunate incident. It was offensive to blacks. Many segments of the Jewish community found his remarks offensive, and they certainly have, nor did they in fact have, any part in the Giuliani campaign.
We're going to come back in about 2 minutes after commercial, and we're going to talk about taxes, how people pay their taxes, how people talk about divorce and annulments, things that have affected the candidacy of both candidates. So we'll see in about
Look forward to
1 minute. We're back with two very able and eloquent participants in the election, forthcoming election. Raymond Harding, Vice Chairman of the Liberal Party and a leader of the Liberal Party, a leader of its policy committee, is that correct?
Yes.
Ray? And Assemblyman Jerrold Nadler. By the way, Jerrold Nadler ran against David Dinkins for borough president 4 years ago, and he's here defending David Dinkins' cause, which shows democracy really works, and strange things happens to good fellas and bad fellas, and Ed Koch is out campaigning for David Dinkins, and George Bush is ready to come down for Giuliani, so everybody gets together in the end. That's what a pluralism is in America. Let's talk about two hard issues, Ray. I personally know Simon Berger, and he was chairman of an event where I think I received an award from Boys Town of Israel. Simon Berger, for the audience that may not be familiar with it, accused the Giuliani office of writing Deutschland über alles, I think, was something about Arbeit frei, which is, and I understand, Ray, that you're from a Holocaustic background yourself, so
Yes, I am.
you certainly would feel this thing as much as anybody.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit what happened there, your side of the story.
It's not my side of the story. I'd be happy to tell you what the facts are based upon my examination of court documents. And what happened is that some years ago, when Giuliani was the United States Attorney, there was an investigation of the New York City Housing Authority with which Mr. Berger was doing business. In the course of that investigation, the U.S. Attorney's Office, working in conjunction with detectives from the New York City Housing Authority, had reason to make an arrest of Simon Berger, picked him up at his home, brought him to the U.S. Attorney's Office at Foley Square, interviewed him in the office of one of the assistants. After that interview, he was taken out to a hallway where there was a blackboard in the hallway outside of the library of the U.S. Attorney's Office. On that blackboard were many writings and scrawlings of various types, including the phrase, Arbeit macht frei. When Mr. Berger was taken to the hallway, he was in the company of the person heading up that investigation, who was an employee of the New York City Housing Authority, who himself is Jewish. When Mr. Berger saw those words, and I'm advised, and I believe it to be the case, that Mr. Berger is an Auschwitz survivor.
Oh, he is, yes.
Yes. He became disturbed, he became emotionally upset, as any Holocaust survivor, and especially an Auschwitz survivor, would be, when seeing those words, and there's no doubt that the most nightmarish thoughts must have gone through Mr. Berger's mind and consciousness. And he was released that day. Thereafter, the U.S. Attorney's Office conducted an investigation as to how those words and under what conditions appeared on that blackboard, because Mr. Berger claimed that the words were put intentionally on the blackboard and that he was taken out into that hallway to see that blackboard with those words so as to frighten him or upset him in connection with the investigation that was going on. The inquiry by the U.S. Attorney's Office showed that that blackboard with that phrase on it was there for 3 weeks previous to Mr. Berger's being brought into the building. That, however unfortunate the presence of those words on the blackboard was, that the blackboard being there and those words being there had nothing at all to do with Mr. Berger, because the blackboard was there for 3 weeks before Mr. Berger saw it. Mr. Berger's lawyer made a motion to dismiss the indictment in that case because of the claim that he was prejudiced because of being exposed to those words. It was a federal judge who ordered that investigation. And the judge, upon examining all the fruits of that investigation, issued a memorandum decision to the effect that however those words got there, he made a finding of fact that they had been there 3 weeks earlier, were not placed there in connection with Mr. Berger, and the whole incident was unfortunate. Since that hallway...
Why under his watch? I mean, a respondeat superior. It was his office.
Yes,
How did those words come there altogether?
Nobody knows. The fact of the matter is that in that hallway were all kinds of people, including employees of the New York City Housing Authority, employees of the New York City Department of Investigation. That investigation, under Giuliani's office supervision of the New York City Housing Authority, was conducted under conditions of cross-deputization, so that detectives from the Department of Investigation were deputized to work for the U.S. Attorney. Investigators from the Housing Authority were deputized to work for the U.S. Attorney, so that you had tens and tens of people with access to that blackboard for weeks and weeks prior to Mr. Berger's having been there.
I think that's the whole point. In Mr. Giuliani's office, in his office, where his assistants are walking back and forth, and granted, other people from the Housing Authority, cross-deputization, but his assistants walking back and forth, his assistants having presumably control of the blackboard, that infamous phrase that was on top of the entrance to Auschwitz, Arbeit macht frei, is prominently, and we've all seen in the newspapers the picture of that blackboard. It wasn't a lot of phrases. A few phrases, that was the big one. Arbeit macht frei from Auschwitz, right in the center of that blackboard, in Mr. Giuliani's office, and nobody walking through that place for 3 weeks, none of his hundreds and hundreds of assistants had the sensitivity to erase it. Something's very wrong with that kind of recruitment.
What Mr. Nadler says is not so, because all Mr. Nadler saw was a blow-up of a photograph of the blackboard in a newspaper. I examined the court documents, and I saw the photograph of the blackboard itself. There were many, many writings. This phrase was only one of them. The person who testified in the investigation that he saw the blackboard with that writing on it 3 weeks previous to Mr. Berger being there is an assistant United States attorney by the name of Stuart Abram, who himself is Jewish. The investigation was conducted by an assistant United States attorney by the name of David Zarnow, whose in-laws were Holocaust survivors themselves.
Then what's wrong with these people?
The head of the criminal division of the U.S. Attorney's Office is a fellow by the name of Howard Wilson. He himself is Jewish. The fact of the matter is that while I know and you know the phrase Arbeit macht frei, there are many younger generation types who said during the course of the investigation, yes, they saw those words there. They didn't know what the words meant. They didn't understand the translation of it, and they didn't know what its historical connotation was.
I think another complaint there was, Ray, that Berger was awakened about 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning and schlepped out of bed and brought before a magistrate. And the offense was not that great. I know he's in the lock business, so I'm not making any judgments. I'm bringing out certain things which may reflect upon the character of Giuliani. We're going to go now talk a little bit about the character of David Dinkins.
Well, no, because you're making another mistake, because the documents show that he was arrested at 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning, all right, but he was arrested by 2 detectives from the New York City Department of Investigation. not by federal employees working for Rudy Giuliani.
But who ordered the arrest?
Giuliani had authorized that arrest under those
Now,
circumstances.
I'm not familiar with court proceedings, but I would assume that Giuliani ordered the arrest.
It was the assistant running that case who requested that Mr. Berger be brought in.
There
He
is
was
a
brought in
disturbing-
by New York City
Right.
employees.
One of the
30
problems,
seconds,
one of
Ray,
the
'cause we have to
problems that
break
I
the commercial.
personally have with Mr. Giuliani, with his character,
Can
is
you
a
do it in
certain,
30 seconds?
I think so. There's a certain unscrupulousness with respect to people's rights. Mr. Berger is arrested at 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning. Those stockbrokers, whatever their names are, arrested and put in manacles in the middle of their
We're
offices.
going to back in a minute and talk about the Gable affair, the judge who was indicted and finally freed. We'll be back in a minute. We're back reporting on the election that's coming up Tuesday, maybe the most hard-fought election in New York politics in the last 25 years. Ray may dispute me on that. He's a historian on these things, but to me it looks very tough and hard-fought. We have Assemblyman Jerrold Nadler, very eloquent for the David Dinkins camp, and Raymond Harding, vice chairman of the Liberal Party and leader of its political forum, who is representing the Giuliani camp and probably was the progenitor of the Giuliani campaign. Let's go to Jerry for a minute. Jerry, you know the Hortense Gable affair with Giuliani. What's your feeling as a lawyer, a Fordham lawyer versus an NYU lawyer?
Well, my feeling is, and I'll broaden it a little beyond the Hortense Gable affair. I have...
First of all, do you remember, I mean, I'm a lawyer also, and my friend Saul Rudis keeps pondering and wondering how a U.S. attorney would put a daughter on the stand against a mother. I mean, that bothers him. And if you have any problems, go see Saul Rudis.
It bothers me too. What bothers me is, as I recall the story from the newspapers, he wired her, and got her to steal documents. I mean, using a daughter against a mother. Besides the fact that I think it's not an intelligent thing to do in front of a jury, it's not designed to elicit the sympathy of the jury for the prosecution's case, and didn't, obviously, since he failed in that case. There was an acquittal. It's rather unscrupulous and against the traditions of American law for very good reason. It's part of one of the things that bothers me about Giuliani. There's a whole several different levels where it seems that to get a conviction, he will trample people's rights. He seems not to respect civil liberties. He seems not to respect the general decency. And this case is a perfect example that where you turn a daughter as a witness against the mother, wire her, have her steal documents from her mother's house. That's one thing. Where you arrest a person you could have on a white collar crime, who was acquitted, Mr. Berger, never even prosecuted, I think, ultimately. But you arrest him at 7 a.m. at his home on a Sunday morning instead of having an appearance summons. Same thing with those stockbrokers, most of whom are not convicted of anything, where you take them out in manacles from their offices and destroy their careers. The same thing, I must say, with the Drexel-Burnham case, where I think it was a terrible misuse of the RICO statute to say, in effect, to Drexel-Burnham, and I hold no brief for them. They may have been guilty or innocent, I have no idea. But to say to a company, in effect, I am the prosecutor, and you better plead guilty, because if you don't plead guilty, I will, under the law, I will seize your assets, and because you depend on liquid assets, because you buy and sell, I will destroy your company. You'll never get to trial. So whether you're guilty or innocent, you better plead guilty. I think that's a gross violation.
Is that a fact, Ray?
And he did it to this company in New Jersey. They went bankrupt without ever going to trial.
Leon, you used the word fact. I didn't recognize facts in what Jerry Nadler just said in his entire monologue, because he said Simon Berger was not even tried or indicted. He was tried. He was acquitted. He said that Giuliani's people he used the word manacles. It never happened. It never happened.
With respect to the stockbrokers.
It never happened.
Yes, it did.
Only one of them. No.
He handcuffed some people.
Not true.
Handcuffs are not manacles?
It's not true.
The heck it isn't.
I'm telling you, you're making it up. There were three individuals. Excuse me.
Go ahead.
There were three individuals. Two were picked up in their homes during the course of an afternoon. One was visited by the FBI in his office. He refused to come along with FBI agents until after the stock market closed. The FBI agents told him, "You don't understand, you have to come with us now." He refused, so they arrested him and put handcuffs on him, and it was only one person.
But he had to make legal fees.
Yes.
So he closed.
So one of the problems with the Assemblyman here is he thinks he's on the floor of the Assembly and has got some immunity to say whatever comes to his mind. But I'm going to hold you, Assemblyman, to discussing Giuliani's record factually.
All right, Ray, let's talk about the Gable affair.
Let's.
How do you rebut Jerry's assertions about the way Giuliani handled the Gable affair?
Fine. First of all, Secrete Gable has a dual notoriety in the mayoralty with respect to the candidacies of Dinkins and Giuliani, because I'm sure you'll recall some months ago, she shocked the New York City political establishment by recalling that when she was 16 years old, and David Dinkins was a married person and 42 years old, she dated him and he dated her. Now, Secrete Gable's connection to the other candidate, Rudy Giuliani, is that when Giuliani was supervising an office of 135 assistant U.S. attorneys, one of them was running a case against Hortense Gable and Bess Meyerson, and Secrete Gable was a cooperating voluntary witness against Bess Meyerson in connection with developing evidence against an attorney in the case with whom Secrete Gable spoke. The U.S. Attorney's office provided her with recording equipment to record a conversation with an attorney that the U.S. Attorney's Office suspected of acting in illegal manners. Inadvertently, her mother called her, and one telephone conversation was recorded between mother and daughter. As far as the statement that Mr. Nadler made, the Giuliani put up this girl or this young lady to steal her mother documents. It's an outrageous thing to say because it's not true of Giuliani, but it just so happens it's not true of the office altogether because she brought in documents that out of her own head, whatever the condition of her head was at that time, she brought in documents that she had gathered and that were in her own apartment. Nobody told her to steal documents from her mother.
So you're saying that I'm not telling the truth because while you admit that the Giuliani's office took documents from Secrete Gable that she took from her mother, the only difference is that you're saying that she wasn't asked to do it, and I obviously don't know whether she was asked to do it. All I know is that she did it, and they used that kind of evidence.
Well, if you don't know, then why did you say that he asked her?
I said...
All right, there's just another point that I want to bring out, Jerry, and I don't mean to interrupt you. I think it's my floor show right now. What is your feeling as a lawyer and as a human being about putting a daughter against her mother on the stand? Just from a human viewpoint, do you think that shows any type of character or lack of character?
On whose part?
On the prosecutor's part.
I don't remember the name of the prosecutor, so I'm not going to go on television and speak ill of some assistant U.S. attorney whom I don't know. As far as the case, excuse me, I was asked a question. As far as the case is concerned, Secrete Gable was a principal witness against Bess Meyerson, and that's what that case was all about. That she was also the daughter of another defendant in the case. That was not part of the main case. The main case was the government against Bess Meyerson, and I know that you remember that.
Well,
I was in Israel, and I don't...
Let me say
Go
something.
ahead, Jerry.
First of all, the case was against Bess Meyerson. The case was against Hortense Gable. Both of them, one for preferring a bribe, one for allegedly accepting a bribe. Both were acquitted. But second of all, more to the point, Ray has a very interesting debating technique here, or discussion technique. He's supporting Giuliani presumably because he respects all the accomplishments of the U.S. Attorney's Office. But anything the U.S. Attorney's Office did that is questionable, person let off in handcuffs, I won't say manacles, a person arrested at 7 in the morning. Well, what assistant U.S. attorney did that? Mr. Giuliani cannot be held responsible for that. He doesn't know who did it. Well, I don't know which assistant U.S. attorney did it either. The point is, and I don't know if Rudy Giuliani personally directed a given tactic or a given decision or not. But he takes credit for everything that came out of the office, and he has to, and rightly so, and he has to be held responsible for how his office behaved. Now, whether in fact he gave orders that were contemptuous of civil liberties and of people's rights, or whether he employed assistants who were,
You got 20
makes no
seconds,
difference.
Jerry. We'll be back in 1 minute. We're going to talk about a famous personality called Jesse Jackson and see how he fares in this election. I'm Leon Charney. This is a Leon Charney report, replacing Direct Line because we never got to Taba. Taba, as you gentlemen know, is a very hot, disputed area, like the New York City elections are this year. We have really two charming gentlemen defending respective interests of Giuliani and Dinkins. We have Assemblyman Jerrold Nadler for the Dinkins camp and Ray Harding of the Liberal Party for the Giuliani camp. Jesse Jackson, how are you going to defend David Dinkins, or do you have to defend David Dinkins? And Jerry and Ray, please, let's make the answers short because we want to cover a lot of areas. We have 5 minutes.
I think there are a number of things you have to say about it. Number one, Dinkins is not Jackson. He does not agree with him on everything. He has supported him in the past in certain election campaigns. But we're electing Dinkins, and you have to look at, after all, why do we care about Jackson with respect to Dinkins as an indication of how Dinkins might behave as mayor, what he might do? For that, you have to look at the record. Dinkins was one of the founders with Bayard Rustin of Basic Black Americans for the Security for a Safe Israel Committee back in 1975 to oppose the UN resolution on Zionism as racism. Dinkins literally took his life in his hands, was the first black leader, the only major one to my knowledge, to denounce Farrakhan back in 1985. Dinkins has always been with us on Jewish issues, on Soviet Jewry, you name it, down the years and down the line.
He
went to Bitburg to denounce what President Reagan was doing, and so forth. I'll make one other point. So David Dinkins has been, and the Jewish community leaders, that's why people like Rabbi Spielman, the various heads of the Crown Heights Jewish Community Council, the community people in Borough Park, why a lot of these Jewish leaders are supporting David Dinkins because they know a friend when they see one. Second point, and very important point. This city has very tense racial relations, especially between blacks and Jews. I think, and when you cast the vote, it's an exercise
I think
of
it's
prediction.
white and blacks, period. I'm not sure it's only Jews.
It's both, Leon.
Right.
It's both.
Bensonhurst
No question.
was not
It's-
Jews.
But it's also blacks and Jews, unfortunately. And the fact is, when you cast the vote, it's an exercise in prediction. Is the world going to be a better place? Am I going to be better off if I vote for this fellow as opposed to that fellow? If David Dinkins is elected mayor, he will be a major national black spokesman who on major issues, on the Middle East, on Israel, and other things, will say the right things. Not just Jesse Jackson saying things we don't want to hear that aren't right, that I don't agree with about Israel, about the Middle East. You'll have another major black spokesman who will then be a major black spokesman disagreeing with him. I think that's a help to the Jewish community.
You know, Leon,
Ray, go.
I'm very concerned about the Jackson situation because last year in 1988, when Jackson ran for president, David Dinkins was his chairman of his New York State campaign. At the Democratic Convention in Atlanta, David Dinkins supported Jesse Jackson's PLO plank with respect to a Palestinian homeland. But what gives me the biggest concern is that if David Dinkins is elected mayor, in his campaign now, he brought in a fellow by the name of Harold Dickens, who was the number 3 man in the Jackson national campaign for president. Now Harold Dickens is in the Dinkins mayoral campaign. And what I'm worried about, since last year Dinkins was the chairman of the New York State Jesse Jackson campaign, that if he's elected mayor, that he will use the full power and prestige of the mayor's office to try to make Jesse Jackson president of the United States in 1992. He supported him for president last year, and I'm worried that he's going to do that again. That gives me concern.
I think I almost don't know where to start in commenting on that. The fact is, Jesse Jackson ran for president. He may or may not run for president again. But David Dinkins is going to be mayor if he's elected on Tuesday. And it is a very advantageous thing. David Dinkins was the campaign chairman in New York, along with somebody else, co-chairman for Jesse Jackson. I was at the convention as a Dukakis delegate. I saw what happened. Dave Dinkins was one of the major people who arranged for the withdrawal of the Palestinian plank. That plank was never voted on, and Dave Dinkins was one of the people who fashioned the pullback by the Jackson people, so that we never had that confrontation.
You don't have enough time. Taxes, competency, 4 years, you forget to file your taxes. Can you run a city of New York?
Well, I ran against Dave Dinkins 4 years ago, and I raised the issue, and I thought it was a legitimate issue then. I think it's a legitimate issue now. There are two things. Number one, it's 20 years ago. And number two, as I said before, an election is an exercise in prediction. We now have a much better indicator. 4 years of Dave Dinkins as borough president. He has been a much better borough president than I thought when I ran against him that he would be. And I think it's 20 years ago. It's the only thing you can say about it. I think his record in the last X number of years has been exemplary, and he's been an excellent Manhattan borough president, and has shown in his conduct on the budget and in his use of discretionary funds for Jewish organizations, for other organizations, and his general conduct on budget matters, that he's prudent and that he's effective.
Ray, taxes, stock.
Man failed to file and pay taxes for 4 years. Now he's come up with some bogus explanation to try to erase 2 votes that he cast for the Inner City Broadcasting Corporation, the principal of which is Percy Sutton. That corporation was doing business with the city, was a violation of the city code of ethics for Dinkins to vote on it, because either he or his son owned shares in that company, and it makes no difference. Then he lied on his financial disclosure statement, because he valued that stock in his city financial disclosure statement as being worth $20,000 to $60,000, when at the same time, when he filled out a Urban Development Corporation form, he valued the stock at $1.3 million. Both answers can't be true, so he lied. And there's another thing, Leon. I'm amazed that the Dinkins campaign had the nerve to send Jerry Nadler here to be a Dinkins spokesman, because on August 20th, 1985, Jerry Nadler appeared at the New York Times in a debate with David Dinkins and said that he lacked integrity, and he accused him of a conflict of interest. And on September 4th, 1988, Jerry said to the UPI 85 that Dinkins lacks integrity.
Yeah, but that's politics. Koch is
No,
running
it's
with
not
Dinkins.
politics. It's a
I want to
question
give
of
Jerry 30
integrity.
seconds because we got to run to Tabo. We have not much time.
The fact of the matter is, on this whole question of the stock, it's a complicated matter, but it was explained. The New York Times, Newsday, they all went to professors of accounting and tax, and they all said, well, after his explanation, it's okay, nothing illegal, nothing wrong. And the New York Times and Newsday and Daily News would not have endorsed Dave Dinkins if they thought, having examined this not-so-simple situation, that it was as simple as Mr. Hardy
All right,
points
we
out.
got
It was
4
something wrong with
years
it.
ago, you said David
Ray.
Dinkins lacks integrity, didn't you?
4 years ago, I said the tax situation, which was then 16 years in the past, showed that, and I think that his conduct since then has shown that that's not the case.
Gentlemen, keep it hot. We'll be back in 1 minute to return. We're going to have summation, 4 minutes, 2 minutes apiece. We're back with Ray Harding of the Liberal Party supporting the Giuliani campaign, and Jerrold Nadler, Assemblyman from the West Side, supporting the Dinkins campaign. It's hot and heavy. It's been a fantastic program. I wish the other two, the real candidates, would debate as heavily as these two lightweight gentlemen are, not in their, only in their weight. We have 4 minutes left, and what I'm going to do in summation is allow each of you 2 minutes to sum up There's so much to talk about, the issues, competency, et cetera, et cetera. We'll start with Ray Harding since he's older, Jerry.
Speaking on behalf of Rudy Giuliani, I'd like to say that there's two aspects to it, his past and his future. His past consists of having served as Assistant U.S. Attorney, Assistant Attorney General of the United States, and for 5.5 years, the United States Attorney for the Southern District. In each of these jobs, he has excelled. He's been a star. In fact, they made a movie about him when he was Assistant U.S. Attorney, and he became the most famous United States Attorney of the 92 U.S. Attorneys in the entire country, called the greatest crime fighter since Tom Dewey. So at every job he's had, he's excelled. David Dinkins has had a lackluster, undistinguished public career. He was on the Board of Elections. That place was a morass and a zoo. He served as city clerk. The comptroller of New York City raided that office and issued an audit saying it was chaotic. While borough president, he engaged in massive conflicts of interest. What's wrong with the Dinkins candidacy was shown on primary night when Dinkins couldn't get control of the stage because Jesse Jackson dominated that stage on television for 35 minutes and wouldn't let the candidate take control of the stage. That candidacy is damaged. David Dinkins is incompetent and he's troubled by ethical considerations. Rudy Giuliani will be a great leader of New York City.
All right, Jerry, you have to sum it up quickly. You got 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. David Dinkins has been the borough president of Manhattan for the last 4 years. He has done by general consensus of those who've observed it an excellent job. He's been a leader as a borough president. He's been innovative. He's gotten developers to build low and moderate income housing, not just luxury housing. And he's been consistent over a long public career. He hasn't flip-flopped from I'm a governed Democrat to a Reagan Republican. He hasn't flip-flopped. He's been intellectually honest, unlike Mr. Giuliani, who a year ago said he would urge the Supreme Court to reverse Roe versus Wade because a woman did not have a right to choice, and now says he's in favor of a woman's right to choice after he saw the polls. Dave Dinkins, unlike Mr. Giuliani, did not go down to Haiti, look at the tyranny of baby Doc Duvalier, and then testify before the U.S. Senate that we should not admit Haitian refugees because they're not going to be persecuted, because it's not a tyranny, to general laughter. Anyone who is sensitive to human rights, anyone who's sensitive to women's right to choose, and to intelligent and progressive government should vote for David Dinkins.
There you have it. It's a hot debate. Ladies and gentlemen, you have your choice on Tuesday. I think either one of these men could run the city of New York, by the way. I think they're both eloquent and they're very persuasive. It's for you voters to go to the polls on Tuesday, and we'll talk about it next week. Maybe we'll bring you boys in for a wrap-up to see who was right and who was wrong. In any case, we're in New York and we're not in Taba, and we hope to see you next week with a new mayor of the city of New York. See you next week.